I'm in the studio of Nikki Taylor. How are you, Nikki?
Very well, thank you.
So you're in Royal Willam Yard in Plymouth?
Absolutely. Moved in here in September last year.
And what made you come to Plymouth?
Largely the appeal of the sea, I think. I grew up by the sea, and we've been inland in London, Surrey for many years, so I think it's time to return to the sea.
So what's your background?
I took up sculpture late in life, having done various other things like advertising, family, run my own business and various things. But I've always been a maker all my life since I was tiny. Yeah. And it was really just a matter of time before I committed myself fully to doing it professionally.
So where do you study?
I went to Wimbledon School of Art, and I had a wonderful 3-year course there.
What years were you there?
I graduated in 203.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
So what did you specialise in?
I specialised in studying the human form. In fact, what I actually studied was technical arts, which is effectively sculpture for film and TV. But that's because what I wanted to learn, the skills for sculpting, was the human form. Yeah. And this isn't something which is actually taught in conventional fine art sculpture classes anywhere any longer. But I achieved my goal because, in fact, the erstwhile heads of department of traditional figure sculpture are now all working in special effects departments. So I got the tuition and the skills that I was after.
Have you ever had any problems with working with the human forms in the UK, or with the attitudes of people?
No, don't have any problems with the UK. But something that I do have to watch is that I exhibit, for example, at the Terminal 5 Gallery, and a lot of their clients are from overseas, and they potentially have problems with the human form, certainly with anything nude.
Which countries?
Well, basically the Arab countries. Yeah.
So what form of creative media have you used?
I was trained in clay for bronze, casting in bronze, and that is a wonderful way of really learning the human form. And in fact, I was taught the same techniques that have come down since Michelangelo's days, effectively, word of mouth and training, so there's a wonderful sense of continuity on that. But at the same time, I've always been interested in mechanical things and kinetic art. So one of the things I also did at Wimbledon was studying that to some extent, and I made some automata, because basically I've got two interests, one being the whole idea of energy. Well, I suppose they mesh together, the whole idea of energy and connectivity, and really how that relates to the human. So I was able to study this in two separate forms, if you like, the static of the detail of the human, and at the same time the mechanical. But actually combining the two together is quite tricky. Which is really, I suppose, where I was led to look towards what ended up being wire mesh as a medium. Because what I discovered with my mechanical figures is that I was trying to capture the whole connectivity of the viewer working the sculpture and to demonstrate the linking between us all. But that does result in a rather clunky little figure, which lacks the magic of the human form, which on the other side fascinates me.
Did it take you long to develop your style using wire?
It's taken ages because I did a lot of experimentation, and wire is actually particularly difficult stuff to use. First of all, it's difficult to get hold of, and
there's a sort of sensuality using clay, isn't there?
There is a sensuality using clay, but in fact, in finding the right mesh, I was specifically looking for something which did allow me to create the same sense of sensitivity and sensuality.
Yeah.
So I was very pleased with this as my final material.
So you seem to be attracted to the athletic form in motion.
I'm particularly interested in that. I suppose that my personal fascination is to capture a particular sense of sort of exhilaration and energy.
That's the spiritual side of movement in the body.
Yes, well, I suppose that's it. There's a particular mood which it's really difficult. You know, sculpture's all about capturing a nice sedate pose where somebody's sitting for a long time, and the appeal to me is to actually catch the zing of energy in terms of subject matter, and also the whole wonderful idea of being able to free sculptures from gravity, because clay is wonderful for capturing detail, but it's all about weight and heaviness and gravity and earth and metal, wonderful elements, but nonetheless very earthbound. And I like the idea of being able to free my sculptures from
yours
that.
Yours doesn't rust, does it? So it doesn't change. You work in stainless steel?
Yes, it is stainless steel. In fact, the thing is that it's a very appealing idea to work in copper, and I've done it, and the whole thing about the way it corrodes. It's all very poetic, but in fact, in reality, what happens is you get drips coming off an elbow, which will make a rather unsightly stain on their knee. Yes. So, in truth, I quite like the stainless steel, which I can then control, and I can have it coated in different colours. I mean, I don't go for wild colours, so one has a range of colour opportunities as well, if that's something that you want to pursue. Personally, I like it to still look fairly basic. I like the elemental look of it.
Do you still work in clay?
I do, actually, and in fact I'm about to do a clay commission at the moment. I mean, for all that I've said about clay, to actually capture the detail of a serious portrait, there's nothing that beats clay still. And with portraiture, what makes it particularly fun is that it's always a collaborative process. It's between me and the subject, and there's normally a third party who's commissioning it. And so it's a matter of the three of us working together to capture the essence of that person.
So what made you move across into wire?
The search for wire was because I wanted to, much as for the portraiture, clay is wonderful. I wanted to concentrate more on the whole connectivity idea, and I was looking for a way almost of making sculptures which were just a dotted line in the air, which of course with paint you can do, you can blur a figure into their background, but I wanted to achieve a similar kind of thing in 3 dimensions. What led me into wire mesh was my search to, in a way, almost be able to create a sculpture which was a dotted line in the air. And so I was looking for something which would be completely permeable, so that the outer energies and the inner energies could be clearly merging and flowing. And so whilst in my sculptures with the wire mesh, they are in themselves inert, if you like. They are only images of movement. But nonetheless, they allow the elements to be moving. So whether it's the wind, the rain, or just simply your eye, there is a reactive quality between you and the sculpture. And what you'll notice about the wire mesh in particular is where you look at a piece where it's double, as you look through it, maybe on this one you can see it better, as you look through it, you see this zing of the moire effect, which is just a magical kind of energy that it has in itself. As you move your eye, you can see the zzz. And I just find that, very magical. And I feel that inherent energy of its own in reaction with you is one of these things that it makes it special for me.
It's a very European way of doing art. You know, I was in Portugal last year, and the ceramics are all based around playing on your eyesight.
Yes.
And throwing your head around a bit. And,
yes.
I think that's what you mean.
Well, I think that is. And I think actually the way that the human being is wired, hardwired, if you like, the way our brains work, that to me is actually part of the fascination with figure sculpture. Because when we look at a human form, whether it's a made one or whether it's a real one, we read it with our own bodies and we understand what the pose is doing and what the pose means. And we sort of feel what the model would have been feeling, if you like. And so you just instantly feel and understand.
Like you're saying, there's a sense of freedom in the movement, isn't there?
Yes.
It's just being at one with the world and the landscape and the environment around them.
Yes, that's right. And I'm playing, if you like, on our mental ability and the way it works with these things. And you get a similar equivalent effect with landscapes, whereby if you look at a painting of a landscape, your focal length actually alters so that you look deep into the sky in it. And if you then try and examine a tiny little bit of paintwork, you actually have to readjust your eyes because your brain in that instance is hardwired to look into the landscape. And in the same way with a figure, we're hardwired to understand it. And you get the same thing with portraiture. You know, what is so intriguing is that I can put a little sort of a little twist at the edge of the mouth, and then when people look at it, there will be some people who think that's a nasty smirk that he's got there, and there will be others that think, well, he's obviously got a bit of a twinkle in his character, and it's there's just so much interaction in the whole thing.
So, who have you worked with, or had as models?
Well, I've used local models a lot, but I've had Tom Daley model for me. You got images to work off. Yes, that's right. This was in connection with a charity scheme that I did pre-Olympics. With an outfit in Bath called Art at the Edge, and so that was all very exciting. And we were raising money for the Paralympics and the Youth Sport Trust.
So we've just been looking at some bronze resin images, portraits.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Those are my copies. In fact, the one on the left is my husband, I think there's a little bit of license in that one. Only time-wise. I think I captured him in the rather earlier stages of our relationship than when I was actually sculpting it. But anyway. But going back to the Olympics, as I was saying, the charity scheme I was involved in was supporting the Youth Sport Trust and the Paralympics. And Jason Gardner, who is very heavily involved with the Youth Sport Trust, was another of my subjects. And in fact, I did a life-size sculpture of him, which in fact, in the end, I donated to the Youth Sport Trust.
Yes.
But that is a small version, a small relief version there.
Sorry, just get behind this head. Tremendous shape there.
But in fact, I was very pleased to actually donate that, because one of the things is that the whole idea of doing sculpture to celebrate the Olympics is this whole idea of the legacy that you're leaving to others. And ideally, you should actually be in the business of inspiring, you know, the young. This is what it's all about. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. But the nature of sculpture is that it's rather expensive and elitist.
Yes.
And so inevitably you tend to have it actually being bought, mainly, by a fairly privileged few.
Yeah.
And so the nice thing about having the Jason Gardner sculpture, and in fact have I got a picture of him? No, not to hand. But what was so nice about it actually going to the Youth Sport Trust is it's up in Loughborough at their base. And it's a centre where the young aspiring athletes really do go.
Yeah.
And so one is actually helping, I hope, to inspire the young aspiring.
So who's this chap and what's the story of this one?
This one here, this gentleman, this is Paul, and he was actually one of my degree pieces in Wimbledon.
Yes.
And if he has a rather classical look about him, it's because he was actually of Greek origin and he was a bodybuilder. So in a way, plus ça change.
Yeah. So he enjoyed posing for that then?
He did. Well, I think he did. And, well, you know, it's...
I like the artistic license around his neck.
Yes, well, I don't think one should be too po-faced about this stuff, you know. I think that he has... It's concrete, in fact, here. Yeah. And I just like to have him around.
So what's the story of these other pieces?
Really, it's a way here. It's a way of just being able to provide just a small snapshot of the human form, just really capturing the essence and the energy.
Yeah. When were these made?
I've made these recently, in fact.
Are they local models or are they taken from models?
Yes, they're based on photographs that, in fact, I took from models a few years ago, one way or another. But in truth, I always like to go back to the original shots because the sense of energy that one captures is very much down to getting the absolute minutiae of the body right.
Yeah.
Because it's that we actually read.
Yeah.
And for example, if you don't get the tension in the muscles correctly, then it just looks like somebody, you know, striking an attitude. It doesn't look as if somebody's actually really in motion.
Yeah.
And this is the detail which, when we look at a figure, that we understand and we can tell the difference without even knowing the details of what should happen to your body. You can just simply tell the difference between an image of somebody leaping and an image of simply somebody standing still with their legs sticking up.
Yeah.
So that's why, for me, actually getting it completely right is the secret.
Yeah.
And I don't stylize my figures because I don't feel that I can actually improve on nature. And I don't see why making my figures either anorexic or bulimic makes them particularly more expressive.
So you've got a commission going off here, haven't you, as well?
I have. This is a diver for a private client.
Yes.
And after this, the next one coming up is, in fact, a clay portrait of a gentleman who is deceased, but whose family are commissioning me to do, because he was very much a member of the local community.
Yeah.
At the moment, I don't think I should mention his name.
Yeah. Okay.
But nonetheless, it's going to be a very moving sculpture to do because he affected the lives of a lot of people very positively. Nice. And so it's the kind of thing which it's really rather an honour to be called upon to capture, really, for posterity.
What's the story of this footballer?
Oh, well, the footballer, he doesn't really have a particular story. I suppose one of the things here is that most of my sculptures have actually been of either nudes or semi-nude.
Yeah.
What I really needed to have on my portfolio was an example of what I can do with clothes on, because there's a lot of potential in the sporting world for capturing individuals, but most of them have more clothes on than I'm used to portraying.
Yeah.
So.
And what about this other piece?
This actually is one that was inspired by the Olympic collection of pieces that I did, because in addition to these, to the life-size figures, I was asked by the British Olympic Association to produce some reliefs to go in their what's it called, their main Olympic GB house.
Oh.
So I had a selection of these pieces around the lounge where the athletes would be hanging out after their day, and where they would be able to have a drink with mates and family, etc. So again, that was a wonderful thing. And she, in fact, is the last of the collection. I've been rather keen to hang on to one of them.
Yeah. So you do busts as well?
I do indeed. Well, that in fact is just my plaster cast of a big bronze commission which I did, which was here. And this was in fact, my client was the generation between these two. And his father was unwell, so he was very keen to have a sculpture of him to be going on with.
So what are your plans for this year?
Well, I'm going to be making some, I want to be making a dancer for the gallery, or for gallery use. I want to do more dancers. And I've also got various ideas of things I'd like to pursue with mesh, on a slightly different direction. So it's really a matter of finding the time to pursue a bit of my own experimentation and weaving that in with the work that I'm variously commissioned or needing to do. I think one of the main things that I wanted to achieve with wire mesh or its equivalent when I was looking to move away from clay, particularly on the, whether it's portraiture or whether it's an action shot, what I'm always trying to capture is, if you like, the intangible side, whether it's mood or personality or whatever. It's all these non-physical attributes. And at the same time, we use our bodies to convey all these things. So I was looking for a material where I could get the absolute detail of the body still, because this is the means of communication, but allude to the fact that there is so much more to us than the concrete. And so the mesh, in fact, was a fairly magical find for me. To help capture the unique relationship between intangible self, if you like, and the way that is actually communicated and understood via our very physical flesh.
So how did you come up with the idea for mesh?
Well, to be quite honest, I was trying everything. I was using ordinary wire to begin with, and variously sort of weaving or knotting or what have you to create a form. And that was all very interesting, but the trouble is that doesn't give you the absolute subtlety of the physical form, and the sleekness, if you like, the way that our bodies really are. So it was a matter of a material that actually provided that. So in the end, it had to be a sheet material. But what's so magical about the mesh is that it's an industrial material. It's mainly used for things like in irrigation and for filtration and what have you, all kinds of things. And yet it has this wonderful dynamic. It's almost as if it always wanted to be a human form, which is ridiculous. But, you know, they talk about this with stone and with wood, that, you know, the sculptor is releasing the figure that was actually in there. And I feel a little bit the same, that I'm actually releasing the figure that was rolled up, you see, in this kind of form here.
Yeah.
But the fact that...
Sorry.
The fact that I'm just sort of really mesmerised by the fact that a fairly brutish industrial material has got such extraordinary sensitivity to it, and the way that it curves around a form. You just don't expect something that's man-made to bring that kind of quality, of dynamic.
Yeah. Something that can be hard, can be so subtle and soft.
Yes, that's right. But you just, you know, you expect wood or stone to have a wonderful grain.
Because you've got the indentation of the muscles and everything.
Yes, exactly. You know, the way it just, it just sort of flows into the form, yes. I think is wonderful. And as I say, the presence of such a... that an industrial material could be such an extraordinarily sympathetic medium for sculpture.
So how long does it take you to make a piece, a full-size piece?
Well, I suppose it's somewhere between about 6 weeks and 3 months, depending on how it goes.
That's a commission?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's beautiful anyway. And thanks a lot, Nikki.
Thank you very much.
So, what's your address for this place in the Royal Willam Yard?
I'm 34G.
34G?
34G is my studio number.
Yes.
And the Royal Willam Yard is Plymouth, and it's a really wonderful place, the whole Royal Willam Yard altogether. Sorry?
The great vibe here.
Well, I think it's wonderful, and I only really caught little snippets of the summer, because it's only really in September that we moved down properly. Yeah. But I think that the whole place will really come into its own in the summer.